As you're having a seat, give it up for Mr. Ben Ledet.
I love you, Dad!
I love you too.
Good, that would be awkward.
Well, we're here. We're back. We made it. Didn't think we'd make it here. I mean, the start of 2020 was something like this, but here we are now. It's been rough, right? It's been a lot of ups and downs over the past year and a half or so. And it's almost as if Satan didn't want us to finish the story. It's been crazy the past year or so. But I think even in the craziness, we can still find some good news. How many of you guys know who this is? Yeah? Just shout it out. John Krasinski, right? Also known as Jim from The Office. I don't know, how many of you guys have seen this series that he did? Some good news? Yeah? So a few of you guys? Okay, well, John did this series called Some Good News last year because just listening to the media and the news, it was all doom and gloom and all negative. And he felt that people needed to hear the good that was going on. And you can still find the good even in the midst of the craziness. But if you just listen to the media, you would have thought, this is it. This is how we go out. But according to the book of Revelation, the end is going to look quite different than what we see now. Because when that end comes, we're going to see Jesus as he truly is. So, I can't say last year, but the last time we were here, we started a two-part series to the book of Revelation, and that got put on pause. And like I said, I don't think Satan wants us to hear the rest of this story and hear how the story ends. So let me catch you back up to what we talked about. So 2 years ago, we said that the very first words of the very first verse of Revelation tells you what this book is completely about. That at its highest point, this is a revelation of Jesus Christ. That its grandest theme is the person of Jesus Christ. That its greatest treasure is the supremacy of Jesus Christ. And the most profound idea is the sovereignty of Jesus Christ. Now the word revelation is actually taken from a Greek word, apocalypsis, which is where we get our word apocalypse from. But it really means to unveil or to uncover that which is hidden. So this book is not called The Mystery of Christ or The Puzzle of Christ, but literally the unveiling of Jesus Christ. It's sort of like taking a Scooby-Doo approach to Christianity. But instead of unmasking the monsters at the end, this is revealing who Jesus really is. Daniel puts it this way. He says, there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. Amos says, surely the sovereign Lord does nothing without revealing his plan to his servants. And then Revelation 1, verse 1. The revelation from Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants what must soon take place. He made it known by sending his angel to his servant John, who testified to everything he saw, that is the word of God and the testimony of Jesus Christ. Blessed is the one who reads aloud the words of this prophecy, and blessed are those who hear it and take to heart what is written in it, because the time is near. So first and foremost, this is both a revelation from Jesus and about Jesus. It has nothing to do with all of the monsters that are revealed in this book, except in how they pale in comparison to who Christ really is. Now, when we started this two-part series, we really said that the book of Revelation could be broken into two parts. One that focuses on our present situation and one that focuses on the future. Now, Last time we looked at the present situation and we looked at the 7 letters to the 7 churches. And what we did was we wanted to see how is Jesus revealing himself through these 7 letters, and then what does that reveal about us? But this year we're going to look at that future hope and who Jesus really is as King of Kings. And after the kind of year that we had, I think we can all use a little future hope. So what is that hope? What do we really hope for at a core level? I think it is this, that in the end, God is going to make everything all right. So let me say that again. In the end, God is going to make everything all right. He's going to redeem all the things that we're ashamed of. He's going to restore all things to their eternal state. He's going to renew things that have become worn out and used. And he's going to resurrect everything that has experienced death and decay. Now, Kent stated that the whole world is pressing forward to something. It's as if the whole world is sitting on the edge of its seat, waiting for the return of its king. Now, even though we've dealt with a lot of craziness this past year, and we all go through struggles in our life, and all the struggles and battles and turmoil that we see in the book of Revelation, I want to make it clear that God is not, let me repeat that, he is not punishing the world because of the evil that's in it, but he is purifying it of evil so that in the end only good remains. Now, I think this is at the core of each one of us. And if you don't believe me, then, so sorry, I skipped this part here. So there is this battle between good and evil, and I love Kronk here. And the part here is that we know that good wins in the end. And I think this is at our core level. And if you don't believe me, just ask yourself, why do we love all these Disney movies? There are a ton of them out there with the same message. And I think it's because there's a little bit of God's Spirit inside each one of us that loves to stand up and cheer when all that's good and right wins in the end. Walt Disney said this himself. He says, the important thing is to teach a child that good always triumphs over evil. And you might say, well, what about things like Empire Strikes Back, where evil wins in the end? Well, you've got to remember, that's not the end of the story. That story goes on, and good wins in the end. And so, the same thing is true for us, that good is returning to this world, and we have to let go of the evil that is in this world and hold on to what is good, because in the end, that is all that is going to remain. And this is the hope that we have. That one day, Jesus will reach down and pull us out of the evil that's around us. Now, last year, we used the 4 living creatures as the team mascots because these creatures, all they do is sit around God's throne and cheer for what's good and right. But this year, we're looking at the 4 horsemen, which are pretty much the most popular theme from the book of Revelation. And I want to point out that we're using these as the symbols of our teams this year because these are all the things that Jesus destroys and defeats in the end. I watched as the Lamb opened the first of 7 seals. Then I heard one of the 4 living creatures say in a voice like thunder, "Come." I looked, and there before me was a white horse. Its rider held a bow, and he was given a crown, and he rode out as a conqueror bent on conquest. Now the first horseman is the white horse, that the rider is more known as conquest. Now this could be seen as everything that we set up in our life on the throne instead of placing Jesus on the throne. Because Jesus, after all, is called the King of Kings. When the Lamb opened the second seal, I heard a second living creature say, "Come." Then another horse came out, a fiery red one. Its rider was given power to take peace from the earth and to make people kill each other. To him was given a large sword. The red horse its rider is more known as War. Now this horse symbolizes everything that sets itself up in our life, that battles against who we are. It fights against our true nature. And it's not just the demons and Satan like we see in the book of Revelation. It's our own sin. It's our own choices that are battling against our nature. Now this, in comparison to Jesus, who is the Prince of Peace. When the Lamb opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come." I looked, and there before me was a black horse. Its rider was holding a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard what sounded like a voice coming from among the four living creatures saying, 2 pounds of wheat for a day's wages, and 6 pounds of barley for a day's wages, and do not damage the oil and the wine. Now, this sounds a little strange, but this really isn't a little strange. This is a little strange. Now, the fourth horse, the black horse, its rider is known as Famine. Now this can be seen as everything that we hunger and thirst for in our life, but never really fills us. In contrast, we should be coming to Jesus, who is called the bread of life, and who wants to give us things that really fill us, like love, acceptance, peace, hope. When the Lamb opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature say, "Come." I looked, and there before me was a pale horse. Its rider was named with Death, and Hades was following close behind him. They were given power over a fourth of the earth to kill by sword, famine, and plague, and by the wild beast of the earth. All right, now the pale horse, we're actually giving the name of its rider. His name is Death. Now, I think this one's a little more obvious for us. This one's a little more obvious because I feel like inside each one of us, there's this looming clock ticking down, that we know our days on this earth are numbered. We know that our life is only but a breath. But if we know Jesus, we don't have to fear death, because he is called the way, the truth, and the life. Now this last year was especially hard for me, because I lost my dad. He was born James Anthony Ledet, but most of his family just called him Jimmy. Now, everyone else that I've seen him around always called him Smokey. And I did not find this out until after the funeral, but he never got that name because he smoked a lot. and he did smoke a lot. But my mom said she actually gave him the nickname Smokey because the first time she met him, he was wearing the Smokey the Bear hat. Now, my dad was he was a carpenter by trade, which I guess something passed along to me. And he loves fishing. He would love to be out on a lake like this, just out in nature, fishing, just in the quietness, just enjoying God's creation. In the end, he was many things to many people. But to me, he was just my dad. And losing him made me take a second look at my own life and think about my own death and what am I leaving behind? And not just for my kids, but everybody that I come in contact with. And what kind of legacy am I going to leave? What are people going to remember me for? And it's my hope that my life is the book of Revelation. That my life is revealing who Jesus is more fully to this world around me. That I'm bringing hope to a world that so desperately needs it. That I'm bringing love and acceptance and peace and joy to a world that desperately needs it. That's my biggest hope. And Jesus, as King of Kings, means that he's in control. We don't have to worry about calling the shots. He's got it covered. Jesus says the Prince of Peace means that we're no longer enemies of God. We don't have to worry about battles or fear. That he's made reconnection with us and God. And Jesus, as the bread of life, means that we don't have to worry about our basic needs. He's going to provide for us everything that we need. And Jesus, as the way, the truth, and the life, means that we don't have to worry about death. That death is not the end of our story. 1 Corinthians puts it like this. Just as Jesus was raised from the dead, we too will be raised to eternal life. But if all we get out of Jesus is just a little inspiration and a few short stories, then we should be pitied by all people. But we hold on to this truth, that Jesus has indeed been raised from the dead. Death is here as a result of man's sin, but life is here as a result of Christ's sacrifice for us. This is not something man made up, and it's not smoke and mirrors and a bunch of lies. As Christians, we have staked our lives on this fact and testify as faithful witnesses that God has raised Jesus from the dead. And when he returns, he will raise all those who belong to him. Then the end will come, when he hands over the kingdom of God to the Father after he's destroyed all evil. And the last enemy to be destroyed will be death itself. Now, in the beginning, heaven and earth were one. But they were suddenly ripped apart by sin. And it's because we didn't really believe God that what he said, that you will surely die. And so mankind took God's creation and twisted it and distorted it and used it in ways that it was never intended to be used. It's as if God gave us grapes and we made raisins. So I say that we need to hold on to what God calls to be good. We shouldn't hold on to these grape corpses any longer. That we need to let go of the evil, to hold on to the good, because our hope is that God is restoring all things. So we often look at the book of Revelation And we think it's all about God's wrath and his judgment and all the destruction that he's going to bring on this earth. We think that it's about heaven and hell. But did you guys know that the words heaven and hell never appear anywhere, not even a single time in the whole entire Bible? Not once. However, heaven and earth appear in almost every single book of the Bible. And it appears over a dozen times in the book of Revelation alone. That's because God sees value in all of his creation. He says it's worth saving, it's worth holding on to, and he's not going to let Satan win. In the end, he's going to restore it, redeem it, renew it, and resurrect it, so that in the end, only good remains. Now, I'm borrowing this illustration from someone who borrowed it from somebody else, so it's not my own, but I think it perfectly illustrates what I'm talking about. And it's called the Gospel in Chairs. So in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, and he created us in his image. And God wanted nothing more than to have a face-to-face relationship with each one of us. And because he loves us, love necessitates choice, so God gave us the choice. We can continue in the relationship with him, or we can turn our backs and go our own way. So what do? We sin. First in the garden with Adam and Eve, but God, instead of turning his back on us, God pursues us and goes looking for the man and woman. And then we turn our backs on God again, and Cain and Abel. And God says, no. He goes running after Cain, and he says, I will protect you from the people who want to shed your blood. And we turn our backs on God again. God says, no, I know. I'll give you my laws so that you can better understand who I am and all the good that I want for you. We say, no, we'd rather live by our own rules. Give us the golden calf. God says, instead, I'll give you my prophets who will draw you back to me by illustrating beautiful pictures of all the good and wonderful things I want for your life. But instead we say, no, it's my life to live. I call the shots. And God says, okay, well, I'll show you what a life is like without me. I'll remove my hand of protection from you. You'll go into captivity for a while, but maybe you'll come back to me. And we say, no, we won't. We turn our backs on God again. And God says, okay, well, I'll send my son to you. He is the living embodiment of who I am. And all throughout the Gospels, we see people who are heading in the wrong direction, like the woman at the well. And Jesus sees her, and he comes to her and says, I want to have a relationship with you. And we see people like Zacchaeus, whose life is headed in the wrong direction. And Jesus says, you know what, Zacchaeus? I want to come to your house, and I want to get to know you. And we turn our back on God over and over. And he continues to pursue us over and over. And on the cross, Jesus becomes one of us. He takes on our sin. But instead of God pouring out his wrath and judgment on Jesus, we pour out our wrath on him. And in doing so, he experiences separation from God. And he dies. But God said, no, that's not the end of the story. Why don't you come back to life? And I'll have a relationship with you again. And so Jesus is not only turning our hearts back to God, but he's revealing the heart of God and how he relentlessly pursues us to have a face-to-face relationship with us. Because he wants his kingdom in our life here and now. And so much so that God says, you know what? I'll give you my spirit to be with you. And we'll experience this life together. Not someday off in the clouds, in the by and by, but heaven will come to earth. And this is the good news. This is the book of Revelation.